Welcome and good day, everyone. Welcome to our seminar entitled How to Run a SCIP Pilot Before Actual Submission. Next. Today's agenda: an overview of the European Union's Waste Framework Directive and SCIP. We'll review a 5-step approach to SCIP reporting and some of the challenges. We'll have a demo of the SCIP submission in ECHA portal. We'll review our APA GreenCheck system-to-system solution, and we'll review the approaches to simplify your submissions. And finally, we'll have a recap. Next, some housekeeping. Everyone but our speakers are muted at this time, and this meeting is being recorded and will be shared after the session. There will be a survey at the end of this webinar for you to fill in order to receive a copy and additional documents that explain this in more detail. And please, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to use the comments section of the webinar, and we will get to you if we have time at the end, or we will follow up at the end of the session. Next slide. Our speakers today are myself, Ken Ingram, with a little over 40 years in the automotive industry, Ms. Karen Strobel, a supply chain expert with over 35 years, Shri Venakata, our head of regulatory compliance here at APA with over 15 years, and Ms. Sonia Peter, who is our subject matter expert for all things SCIP with over 9 years in the business. Next. And who are we? We are a global company employing over 300 persons with over 350 customers over the last 20 years working in engineering, sourcing, software, and compliance. And we provide compliance services with turnkey software for things like REACH, ROSE, Prop 65, and now SCIP. Next. And next. So now joining us is Ms. Karen Strobel for an overview of the EU's WFD and SCIP. Karen?
Thank you very much, Ken. Appreciate that. And thank you guys for joining. And now let's take a trip back in time to the origins of SCIP and how it came to be. We go all the way back to 2008 when the EU decided to put together a waste framework directive. This directive was designed to look at substances of concern in products and articles. And these substances, they wanted to evaluate on how to better recycle these substances and how to reduce the impact of these substances on the environment and on public health. In December 2015, there was an amendment to this framework for the circular economy package, again to try to improve the recycling process for substances of concern and to reduce overall waste. And then in July 2018, there was a revised Waste Framework Directive that launched the foundation of SCIP, Substances of Concern in Products or Articles. These mandates for EU suppliers to submit SVHC, Substances of Very High Concern, information to ECHA, the European Chemical Agency. And also it entrusts the European Chemical Agency to monitor and manage the use of these substances in products. Next slide. So this database consists of any kind of article or product that has an SVHC content above 0.1% weight over weight of article mass. And if the item is placed in the European market for sale or resale, it is required to be in the SCIP database as of January 5th, 2021. This covers any articles that are produced or imported into the EU. Again, the objectives are to reduce overall hazardous waste that involve SVHCs, and also to provide additional information for waste operators to better improve recycling practices, and finally for the government to monitor the use and recycling of SVHCs within the European community. The scope of this applies to any EU manufacturers or assemblers, as well as any EU distributors and importers. Note that retailers in general terms do not have to register products on SCIP with non-EU companies, but it is encouraged to check with experts to confirm this, as there are some exceptions where retailers would need to register with SCIP. Next slide. So there are some exemptions. Some of them include articles that are produced only for export outside the European Union. Also, any articles that are not sold in the EU after the 5th of January 2021. Also, articles that are only repaired and not supplied. Also, there are some exemptions where there are defense and security interests involved, where the articles do not need to be registered with SCIP. Note that any imported articles, including those with internet sales, must be registered with SCIP. The packaging on the articles, if there are SVHCs involved, you must register with SCIP. This also goes for spare parts and medical devices. You will need to perform an update of your SCIP information anytime there are any newly identified SVHCs on the articles. And also, if there are any changes to the article composition, you must update your SCIP notification. Next.
Thank you, Karen. And now we'll review a 5-step approach to the SCIP reporting and some challenges along with that. Next. So step 1, of course, is identifying whether or not any of your products have any of these substances of very high concern that you need to identify and report on. Number 2 would be determining their relevance to the European Union. Now, step 3, you need to select a proper submission method. Step 4, of course, is collecting all the necessary data. And finally, step 5 is making the submission. And so joining us now to review these 5 steps is Shri Vinakata. Shri?
Thank you very much, I appreciate it. Thanks for the introduction. As Ken said, we have laid out the entire SCIP end-to-end process in 5 steps. The first step is identifying the SVHC presence in the article. As you see in the picture, as an example of bolt, which may be made up of 2 materials, steel as a base material and a zinc plating as a coating material per se. If zinc plating has got hazardous SVHC, then SVHC must be calculated considering the overall weight of the bolt mass, and if it exceeds 0.1% weight per weight, then it requires a SCIP submission. However, especially for the non-automotive industries, there are many challenges. Identifying the articles with SVHC itself is a big challenge to the many companies and that are not using IMDS. Availability of certificate of compliance or FMD in a spreadsheet or IPC 1752 format are nice to have, but it requires repetitive follow-ups from suppliers, and it still is a big challenge. Once we have the full material declaration or COCs for the individual articles, having them compiled and analyzed for SVHC at the BOM level is further a big challenge, and they also need to be segregated and analyzed. Next slide. In the step 2, from the previous step 1, if one has identified the SVHC present, the step is to determining the EU relevance. Any producer, distributor, or importer who sells in the EU has the legal obligations to report in the SCIP database. For non-EU suppliers, even though there are no legal obligations to report in SCIP directly, however, they must support to their EU importers with the required certificate of compliance or FMDs. For the non-EU supplier, the direct customer is not in the EU, and at least if any one of the downstream customer chains is in the EU, still the non-EU supplier must be prepared to supply the required details. Some big challenges are getting the relevant SCIP details from non-EU suppliers, either in FMD, COC, or IUCLID .I6Z format, which requires again a repetitive follow-ups and validation of the data supplied by the supplier, and one can expect to have a lot of to and fro communications. Next slide. Once we identify the SVHC and the EU relevancy, the third step is selecting the submission method. Fundamentally, we have two types of methods. Excuse me. Sorry. First one is an online entry where the user can directly jump into the ECHA Cloud Service portal and start preparing the SCIP dossier, or even download a desktop version of ECHA portal and start preparing the SCIP dossier. The second method is system to system method, which means an automatic creation and transfer of SCIP submission, maybe using a third party software. APA is one such system to system provider, where system to system method is advisable to use if one has a bigger bill of materials or high volume of SCIP dossiers, in which system to system enables one to have bulk submission. The company must create an account and assign a legal entity and subscribe to ECHA Cloud Services as a in this step. Next slide. Now we have identified the SVHC presence, identified the EU relevance, and selected the appropriate method. The fourth step is very important, laborious, and the crux of the project, called collecting the data from suppliers. SCIP defines articles into two types: one, article, and two, complex object. As shown in the flow chart, a bicycle may have multiple complex objects which comprises of articles. As an example, a bicycle is a complex object which has further complex objects such as wheels, chain, sprocket, assemblies, etc. And the wheel has several articles such as tires, inner tube. As per the current rules of SCIP, it is required to have the hierarchy maintained as shown in the bicycle diagram. If tire, inner tube, and handlebar have got SVHCs, the hierarchy of the structure should be reported as tire and inner tube attached to the wheels, and they are attached to the bicycle. Similarly, the handlebar grips are attached to the bicycle. For bigger complex objects such as cars, airplanes, turbines, or PC boards, industry associations are negotiating with ECHA until what level the reporting is required. In such cases, SVHC may be present even at the 10 level or above. Is required to report all the levels? Is it required to report all the levels, or just a report a couple of levels? This is currently under discussion with ECHA. Next slide. While collecting the data from the suppliers, customer needs to be very careful in asking the complete details at a time from the suppliers for creating the SCIP dossier. The SCIP dossier has got fundamentally 4 sections: article identification, safe use instructions, complex object component, and concern element sections. Altogether, there are 24 attributes in the SCIP dossier. However, there are 11 attributes that are mandated to be filled, which we will be covering in the subsequent slides. The first section is article identification, which has got 4 mandatory fields: article name, which is a self-explanatory, it can be a simple name; primary article identifier, it can be a simple part number or EAN, GTIN, or catalog number; and the article category, which is also popularly called as a tariff code. Filling this attribute is the most, I would say, little challenging task, which involves picking the right category from a pick list of 20,000 plus. The tariff code is nothing but a code which is intended for classification of goods at the custom, and its ultimate purpose is the declaration of goods, the calculation of duties, and for the recording of statistics. So it is especially required for all the products which are imported into the EU. The fourth one is the production in the EU. It has got 3 options: yes, no, not willing to disclose. So here in this step, basically the challenge is picking from the direct codes which are of 20,000 plus. One has to do a little homework before coming to this. Next slide. So next is safe use instruction. One can attach the safe use instructions, or simply select no need to provide the safe use instruction information beyond identification of the candidate list substance, or attach pre-notes or some attachments. Next slide. The next section is complex object components. This is applicable only to the complex objects. So we have to declare the linked articles. Example, the tires and inner tubes are supposed to be reported here as the linked articles to the wheels here, and the number of units are nothing but the quantity of the respective article. Next slide. Then this talks about the concern element, which there are 4 mandatory fields to be filled. First attribute is the candidate list version. Simple, it is a drop-down list, so one can select. Now it is running as 2020 first off. Second one is list of candidate list of substance. You can choose or enter the CAS number or type in the substance name. Concentration range, basically one cannot enter the exact percentage, but we have to use the drop down. So it can be, if for example of 3%, one has to use greater than or equal to 1% and less than or equal to 10%. So material category or mixture category. In this case, basically, if lead is present in the copper alloy, it can be chosen as a category of material, mixture, metal, then brass. Next slide. So we have covered all the 4 steps, identifying the SPHC presence, EU relevance, selecting the appropriate method, and 4th, collecting the data. Now the 5th step is to make the submission or submit the dossier. The company can choose manual, online submission, or automated system-to-system submission. The decision is purely based on complexity and volume. Normally, as shown in the picture, the lower the complexity, higher is the volume of SCIP submissions. Example, a simple tape bolt can be of higher in volume but lower in complexity with respect to SCIP. Similarly, the higher the complexity, maybe a lower the SCIP dossier volume. An example, cars, computers, etc. If the company has higher volume of less complex articles or higher complex articles, it is recommended to go for a system-to-system method, which saves huge time. It can go for hours together. Next slide. Now we shall run a video of complex object. Now basically how to report in the actual SCIP portal. We have taken a demo video and we will show it to you here. In this video, basically we have covered 2 types of creation, creating the article in the complex object. So the first one is basically we can create the complex component directly under the SCIP article. For example, handlebar grips were created using this method. I will explain you in the video. The second one is to create all the components or articles first. Keep it and save them and recall them when you are building the structure. It is like building, creating the libraries and recalling them as and when we need it. Can you run the video, please? So first is we will log into the system and access the cloud services. First, we will create the bicycle as a complex object. Look at the BOM here. We are taking bicycle as a complex object. We enter the part number, part name, and after that we will try to create another article. For the complex object, we have to give the category. It's called tariff code. production in the EU and other parameters, and safe use instructions. So now we are creating an article which is linked to the complex object on the go. So we are creating a handlebar grip. Add the part number, part name, part number, and again here we have to add the article category, that is direct code. So to handlebar grip, we will assign a SVHC. This is a candidate list, and we are going to assign an SVHC, the concern element. We can search by CAS number or by name. Select the concentration range and select the material category. Material category comes whenever we add any SVHC substance. So on the go, we have created an article. So next, we will try and attach an article which were already created. So we created few articles in the library. Those are wheels, tires, and inner tube. Those we will recall and add the respective quantity. So you can see that. So wheels, tires, and handle grip all are attached by either using on-the-go method or referencing. So we just created a draft. We have to click on the validate to check if there are any errors. There are no errors. We can have a name for the dossier, and we'll have to create a dossier with the data that we have entered. So we created the dossier now. So after opening the dossier, it will ask us whether you're ready to proceed to a submission. If you hit on proceed to submission, it will generate an report ID, submission number, and if you open that, you will have the SCIP ID inside, the blue color one. Yeah. Next slide. So as explained in the 5-step process, we have an system-to-system, our API has a system-to-system software called GreenCheck, which will give the overview of the software. API's GreenCheck is completely developed in-house. It has 5 different modules: Reach, Skip, Prop 60, ROHS, Prop 65, and custom regulation management. Here, customer and vendor supplier can exchange the data between them. It works as a SaaS model and a web-based and secure software. As I said, it has got 2 logins. So in the customer login, one can upload the bill of materials and start surveying the supplier for different compliances. So upon receiving the survey, a supplier can log in and supplier can complete the survey and push it back so that customer can review it and do an accept reject. In this process, both of them can attach documents and both of them can review the documents. So the supplier has opportunity to make the corrections and resubmit in case it is required. Next slide. It's a basically system-to-system software module, and it can handle IPC 1752A, B files. So supplier can be surveyed for skip details for all the 24 attributes, including any attachments. It can also handle .i6z skip files format, and It can be instantly attached and referenced to any article. It can work with IM in the SCIP portal. One can create the SCIP dossier in GreenCheck and download it in .i6z format and share it across with the supply chain, or upload directly to SCIP portal also. So data can even be surveyed via Excel templates from the suppliers and uploaded to GreenChecks. So net, it's a GreenCheck skip submissions. It automates the complete submission process. It is a complete package of system to systems transfer. One can simply collect the skip data, create the skip dossier, collate the skip dossiers from simple articles to complex objects, and push the skip dossiers to ECA portal automatically. So let me show you some screenshots of the software. Industries, they can share the BOM, the GreenCheck, and the GreenCheck takes care of the skip submissions automatically. Shown in the diagram, again, the customer input is a simple bill of material and the safety instructions. APA surveys supplier or GreenCheck surveys supplier for skip data through and reuses some of the data if customer has already some of the data like COCs or FMDs. So then the supplier completes the survey and the APA can fill out other mandatory details, and finally GreenCheck can create the dossier and pushes it to SCIP, and it can be done in bulk also. Next slide. This is another example of a bicycle. So where we have created in the SCIP portal the video, whatever we have shown it, that was done manually, but in GreenCheck we have created the structure in matter of seconds, and maybe less than 1 minute, and it can be pushed just like that from GreenCheck to SCIP. Next slide, please. So here is the structure that you can see for the bicycle. This is i6z file, which SCIP can understand. Next slide. So some of the customer voices that we have experienced during our meetings, especially on the SCIP problem. So we use only mdsystem.com login, and it has all the IMDS data from suppliers, and we have huge volume of IMDS data. While I can find which MDS have SVHC using the analysis option, but not able to identify directly the MDS, which MDS have got more than 0.1% SVHCs. Similarly, another customer said we have 60 different plants using 60 different IMDS IDs. Not all are linked to the same parent ID. So individually they are created. Is it possible to handle skip submissions automatically in this case? So what's the importance of 5th January 2021? Should we complete the skip submissions by then, or should we start by 5th Jan? So another customer said, I have only certificate of compliance PDFs and Excel composition from suppliers. So what do I do now? Is there any automated solution? My IMDS structure is huge and runs to 8,000 nodes with multiple SVHCs. Is there any easy way to identify the skip details and make an automation? So these are the voices of our customers. So we can work with all of these problems, and we can provide the turnkey solution in all these cases. If any one of the audience have similar problems, APA is happy to help. We have the turnkey solutions for them. Next slide.
Sorry, and now Sonia will walk us through the approaches to simplifying your submissions. Sonia?
Thank you, Ken. Now, considering the complexity of the SCIP requirements, ECA is coming up with few approaches for simplifying the submission process. Next slide. The first approach is simplified SCIP notification, also abbreviated as SSN. This is mainly targeted for the distributors who doesn't make any changes on the products while supplying to the customers. In principle, product received is equivalent to the product supplied. The main highlight of this feature is that the distributors don't have to create any dossiers for their products. Instead, they can make simplified skip notification directly in the skip portal through an Excel upload. For this, they need to have skip numbers, article names, and primary article identifiers for all parts from their suppliers. Once the required data is collected, they have to put all this information in a spreadsheet and then upload and submit into ECA submission portal. Once it is done, the distributor will get new skip numbers, and this information can be communicated further down in their supply chain along with their products. While making a SSN, the distributor is linking his notification to its supplier notification and its updates. That means whenever the supplier is making any changes on his product and updating the skip notification, automatically the distributor's notification also gets updated. Here in the image shown at the right side, we have a bicycle producer who is established in European Union and has got skip obligations. So he submits skip notification for the bicycle to ECA and gets the skip number. Then the bicycle producer sells his bicycles to 2 EU distributors and shares the skip number as well. Since these 2 distributors are not making any changes on the provided bicycle, they can make simplified skip notification and get new skip numbers. Next slide. The second approach is referencing. This is mainly targeted for the complex object assemblers and producers who gets parts from EU suppliers. In order to do referencing, you need to get skip number from your supplier. And referencing should only be done if the duty holder is not making any physical or chemical changes on the article after getting it from their supplier. This feature can only be used while making the dossier for a complex object, where the referenced article becomes a component of that complex object. And in addition, you cannot add further components or information to a referenced article. Through referencing also, you are linking to your supplier's notification and its updates. Here in the image shown at the right end, we have a bicycle producer who is getting wheels from an EU supplier. So once this EU supplier makes a skip notification to ECA, he gets a skip number and shares the same to the bicycle producer. Then the bicycle producer can use the skip number for referencing the wheel while making dossier for his bicycle. Next slide. Now, the last approach is grouping, where you group your products and make a single skip submission. The first case is grouping of identical articles. Articles having the same function, physical form, and chemical composition are considered as identical articles. For example, 100 identical O-rings which have all the same features. Second case is grouping of quasi-identical articles. Articles having the same function, SVHC, and material, but the physical form is differing, are considered as quasi-identical articles. For example, O-rings, which are made from the same material and with same SVHC, but of different width, diameter, or color. In this case of grouping, you need to specify names and identifiers for all identical articles while making a single skip submission. The third case is using representative article approach, which means reporting of the worst case. Here, all the worst combinations of articles with SVHC will be reported under a generic identification. A suitable example where this approach can be applied is a printed circuit board with two resistors bought from different suppliers and contain different SVHCs. Even though we have mentioned here 3 cases of grouping, the second and third case is still under discussion with ICA on how it can be executed properly without affecting the objectives of SCIP database. Next slide.
So thank you, Sonia. And now to recap, just in case you missed anything, next slide. SCIP is effective January 5th, 2021. It is a legal requirement for you to register in the SCIP database for any of your articles or products placed in the EU market, provided the substance of very high concern is greater than 0.1% of that article. By now, you should have started communication with your suppliers and internal teams, inquiring whether SVHC affected parts are there, and you should have begun collecting your required information. Now, you should be prepared with best practices to meet your legal obligations. And remember, the release of the SCIP database is just in a couple of weeks, October 2020. You should get access and get familiarized with the SCIP tools and begin your submissions. And remember, all duty holders need to act immediately. The time is now. Next slide. And so how can we help? Well, we can provide consultation and roadmap services. We can act as your supplier liaison and your SCIP data collector. We can update your SCIP declarations, and we offer turnkey solutions through our GreenCheck software, a web-based SaaS model for system-to-system transfer of information, and we even provide APIs for third-party integrations. Next slide. We work with Conflict Minerals, Reach, Rose, SCIP, SIBS, and so thank you for your attendance, and remember, all attendees will receive a copy of this webinar. And remember, again, you can reach us at compliance@apaengineering.com. And this concludes our webinar for this afternoon. Thank you and goodbye.